You ever been in a season where you were surrounded by charm, but your soul felt chained? Where someone smiled with their lips, but stabbed with their silence? Let me tell you something. When the devil can't get to you directly, he'll send somebody wearing the right mask, and that mask will call itself love. Now hear me. Not everybody who walks into your life is meant to stay. Some people are sent as a test, not a blessing. They love bomb, they gaslight, they twist truth till you question your own name. And when you start losing yourself trying to keep them, you got to stop and ask, who's really in control here? Because this right here, this is the moment God steps in. You ever notice how the narcissist always starts off with a bang? I mean, it's fireworks, music, charm, all the bells and whistles. They don't walk in, they have perform. They know exactly what to say, how to look, when to smile, how to make you feel like you just stepped into something rare. They'll have you believing this is fate, like you just found a once in a lifetime connection, when in truth, all you really found was a master of disguise. And that's how it always starts. Not with chaos, not with pain, not with confusion. No, it starts with admiration, with you being idealized, lifted, praised. You think, this person sees me, this person gets me. But you don't realize you're not being loved, you're being studied. Every word you say, every insecurity, every hope, every habit, they're collecting data. Not to protect you, not to grow with you, but to use it when it benefits them. That's how they operate. Just like Goliath, big presence, big voice, loud armor. And they think that just because they come in looking untouchable, you're going to be too afraid to fight. They think they're too smart, too smooth, too perfect to fall. But let me tell you something. A God don't play favorites, and he sure doesn't flinch at fake confidence. You see, Goliath underestimated David not because David was weak, but because Goliath was arrogant. Same way the narcissist underestimates you. They think they've got you wrapped up. They think they've got you fooled, locked, and chained in their little performance. But what they can't see is that you've got something bigger behind you. And just like David, you might not have the armor, you might not have the title, you might not have the strength, but you got God. The narcissist starts strong. Oh yeah, but strength without integrity, power without love, charm without truth, that's just noise. And eventually noise fades. What starts big without a foundation always crumbles. That love bombing they did in the beginning, the grand gestures, the promises, all of it was built on ego. And ego doesn't stand when the storm comes. They made you feel like the chosen one, like the center of their world. And when they sensed they had you, the shift began, the mask slipped. You weren't their everything anymore, you were their project. And you started to notice it. The criticism, the control, the coldness, it didn't start loud, did it? No, it started slow, like poison in water. A question here, a put down there, a silent treatment you couldn't explain, a look that made you second guess your own feelings. But the longer you stayed, the smaller you became, until one day you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. That's how the enemy moves. Subtle, strategic. But God don't miss nothing. You think he didn't see those sleepless nights? You think he didn't hear the way they spoke to you behind closed doors? God was silent, but he wasn't absent. He was letting it play out just long enough for you to finally see it for what it was. Not love, not care, not partnership, just performance. But this is the part the narcissist never plans for. They plan for the start. They plan for the spotlight. But they never plan for the crash. They never plan for the day you wake up and realize your worth. They never plan for the day you stop blaming yourself and start seeing the manipulation for what it really was. And they sure don't plan for the day God steps in and starts fighting battles you didn't even know how to pray for. AC, David didn't beat Goliath with size, he beat him with precision, with truth, with God. And that's what you've got. You don't need revenge, you don't need to expose them. You just need to let God handle what your heart can't carry anymore. Let him deal with the lies, the smear campaigns, the betrayal, the confusion. Because you don't have to swing to win a war God already declared victory over. So yeah, the narcissist might have started strong. They might have come in looking like they owned the whole room. But when God steps in, their power means nothing. Their charm fades. Their lies collapse. Because God ain't impressed by Goliath. And he sure ain't afraid of somebody who thinks they're the puppet master. And if you're hearing this right now, it's because you were meant to. You've been doubting, questioning, wondering if you're crazy for feeling what you feel. But let me say it clear. You're not crazy. You were under spiritual attack. And God is saying, I saw it. I'm here. I'm stepping in. Now you decide, do you still want to fight this on your own? Or are you ready to let God do what only God can do? If this hits you in the chest, you already know what to do. Share this with somebody who's battling in silence. Somebody who needs to hear it like you just did. Because when God steps in, the narcissist can't win. Let me tell you something. And I want you to hold on to this deep. Narcissists don't just want your love, they want your worship. They don't want partnership. They don't want connection. They want submission. And you don't even realize it at first because they make it look like devotion. But little by little, they start rewriting the rules. The truth isn't the truth anymore. It's their version of it. What actually happened? Doesn't matter how you felt, irrelevant. They want the power to define the narrative, even if they have to twist reality to do it. And the dangerous part, they don't just lie to you, they lie to themselves. They convince themselves they're justified, that they're the victim, that you're the problem. They start playing God in your life. They hand out judgment like it's theirs to give. They expect obedience. They expect praise. And the moment you start to think for yourself, the moment you push back, the moment you question something, they treat it like rebellion. They don't see you anymore. They see a threat to their control. That's how deep the deception runs. Because when somebody is full of themselves, there's no room for truth. And when their ego is on the throne, God isn't. That's why they can't really love. That's why they can't be accountable. That's why everything becomes a performance to protect the image, not the relationship. They're not trying to walk with you. They're trying to dominate you, not with fists, with silence, with guilt, with confusion, with control so subtle you question your own voice before you ever question theirs. And you know what really breaks my heart? How many good, kind, beautiful souls get caught in that trap? Thinking they're loving someone, when in reality, they're worshiping someone who sees themselves as a god. Someone who never says sorry unless it gets them something. Someone who punishes you with distance just to maintain the upper hand. Someone who uses your loyalty against you and calls it love. But listen now, they're not God. They might play the role. They might pretend they hold the keys. They might act like the authority, but they can't create, they can't redeem, they can't save. And they sure can't replace the one who breathed life into you. What they build is false. What they protect is image. What they demand is control. And none of that can stand when God starts moving. Because see, God don't beg for worship. He earns it through grace, through mercy, through truth, through love that's never manipulative, never conditional, never rooted in fear. And when you've been under someone's psychological grip for long enough, when you finally taste that kind of real love, it wakes you up. It shakes something in you. You start to see how fake their godhood really was. You start to realize you were never crazy. You were just under the influence of somebody who built their world on your silence. And don't think God's not paying attention. Don't think he's blind to how they manipulated you, how they twisted your faith, how they wore the language of healing just to keep you in bondage. God's got eyes for that. And when he steps in, he doesn't just remove the narcissist, he removes the illusion. He shows you the truth. And when you see clearly, when you see them clearly, there ain't no going back. You don't fall for the flattery anymore. You don't get pulled in by the guilt. Because you know now, you were never the one out of line. You were just trying to survive in a system built around someone else's ego. Let them play God all they want, but when the real God shows up, that mask falls. That throne they sat on, it crumbles. That power they thought they had, gone, because fake gods don't get the final say. Manipulators don't get to write your ending. And narcissists don't get to sit where only God belongs, so let them talk. Let them spin their story. Let them play the victim. You stay rooted. You stay grounded in the truth of who you are and whose you are. Because when your eyes open and your spirit wakes up, that control they once had over you, it dies right there. You don't need to fight to expose them. The light of God does that on its own. All you have to do is walk away from their illusion and step into what's real. Step into healing. Step into freedom. Step into that peace that only God gives, the kind no narcissist can fake, or steal. If this hits you somewhere deep, don't just scroll past it. Share it with somebody who's stuck in the middle of it right now. Someone who thinks they're the problem when really they're the prize, because when God steps in, the narcissist can't win. Let me break something down for you that you might have forgotten in the fog of all that chaos. While you were sitting in that room, lights off, heart heavy, eyes swollen from crying over things you couldn't even explain, a God was watching. While you were standing in front of that person, trying to hold it together while they tore you apart with a calm face and a cold tone, a God was watching. While you were questioning your own memory, begging for understanding, pleading for love, shrinking yourself down just to keep the peace, God saw it all. See, narcissists love to work in the dark, not just behind your back, but in the shadows of confusion. They don't always scream. They don't always hit. Sometimes they're quiet, calculated, controlled. They'll say just enough to leave you doubting your own thoughts. They'll do just enough damage to stay innocent in public, but destructive in private. And that's the trick. That's how they keep power. By making you feel like you're the one spiraling, like you're the unstable one, like you're overreacting, being too sensitive, too emotional. And yet you kept praying. You kept asking God, is it me? Am I losing it? But deep down, something wasn't sitting right because your soul knew something your mind couldn't yet explain. And this wasn't love. This wasn't growth. This wasn't what God designed for you. But because the narcissist painted themselves so perfectly, wore the mask so flawlessly, you kept second-guessing your own spirit. That's how they move, keep you spinning so fast, you can't tell which way is up. But let me tell you something. Just because you couldn't see clearly doesn't mean a God was blind. While you were confused, he was clear. While you were being gaslit, he was gathering truth. While they were hiding behind charm, manipulation, and their fake persona, a God was keeping receipts. Every tear you cried, every silent prayer, every moment you bit your tongue to avoid conflict, God took note, not to punish you, not to condemn you, but because he was preparing your deliverance. See, the narcissist needs the lie to live. Their whole identity is built around being admired, feared, or praised. That's why they crumble when you finally get wise to the game. Because once you start waking up, once you start reclaiming your power, they lose their grip. But here's the part: they never expect God's timing. Because when God decides it's time to pull you out, he doesn't just free you, he reveals them. That revelation is no joke. That's when you start remembering moments that didn't make sense before. That's when God brings back to your memory things you tried to ignore. That time they flipped the conversation to make you feel crazy. That moment they refused to comfort you and called it tough love. The lies, the cheating, the way they had different faces for different people. And suddenly, all the pieces fall into place, not because you're smarter now, but because a God removed the veil. He never turned his back on you. He never let you walk through that pain alone. He was just allowing you to see for yourself what he already knew. Because when you see it, when it finally clicks, you don't need proof. You don't need to argue. You don't need to justify walking away. You know, you've been shown. And that knowing, that comes from God. You know, it's wild. Sometimes the biggest blessing you'll ever receive won't come with applause, won't come with fanfare. It'll come in the form of zay and exit. Yeah, that breakup, that betrayal, that moment when everything fell apart, it didn't destroy you, it revealed the truth. Because when God pulls you out of something, he don't just walk you through the door and close it behind you. He rips the curtains wide open so you can finally see what was really going on behind the scenes. Now, it don't always feel like a blessing when it happens. Sometimes it feels like heartbreak, like confusion, like loss. You're sitting there thinking, why did they leave me like that? Why did they change? Or worse, why did I have to walk away when all I wanted was to love them? But that's the thing. Love don't live in lies. And what you were in, that wasn't love. That was control. That was illusion. That was a system designed to benefit them at the cost of value. But when God steps in, when he says that's enough, he doesn't just remove you, he removes the mask. And that moment of clarity, that's the beginning of freedom. You start looking back at things and saying, wait a minute, that wasn't care. That was manipulation. That wasn't forgiveness. That was leverage. That wasn't support. That was surveillance. Suddenly what once felt like love feels more like a prison. And you wonder how you didn't see it before. It's not because you were blind. It's because the narcissist made sure you were always second guessing what was right in front of you. They didn't want you to trust your intuition. They didn't want you asking questions. They didn't want you getting too strong, too independent, too aware. They wanted you dependent. They wanted you to need their approval just to breathe. And once you stopped needing it, once you started recognizing the patterns, setting boundaries, speaking up, that's when they changed. That's when the mask cracked. That's when the same person who said they loved you started resenting you. But listen close. Don't mourn the exposure. Don't sit and regret thinking, I wasted time. You didn't waste time. You gained revelation. You gained clarity. You gained strength that couldn't be taught in comfort. You had to live it. You had to walk through that valley so that when God showed you the light, you wouldn't just recognize it, you'd run toward it. And here's what I need you to understand. When someone is removed from your life and the truth comes with their departure, that's not abandonment. That's deliverance. That's God saying, you've seen enough. Let me handle the rest. Because exposure isn't just about them being revealed. It's about you being restored. It's about you coming back to yourself. It's about you waking up to the version of you they tried to bury with shame and silence. Now, you don't have to argue. You don't have to convince anybody what really happened. You don't have to run around gathering character witnesses. When God exposes, it don't need defense, it just is. The same people who once believed their act will start to see through it. The masks that worked for years start slipping in places they can't control. You just keep walking. You keep healing. You keep growing. Because the exit already told the story. And let me tell you something else. They're not used to people waking up. They're not used to someone walking away without begging, without trying to fix what they didn't break. That's what shakes them. Not your anger, your peace. Not your rage, your clarity. Because once you're out, once your eyes are open, they know the game's over. They can't manipulate what God already freed. So no, you're not crazy for feeling lighter now that they're gone. You're not heartless for finding peace while they fall apart, trying to play the same tricks on someone else. You're not wrong for protecting your soul. You're free, and freedom doesn't need to apologize to control. The exit was your rescue. The exposure was your closure. Let that be enough. Let God's revelation be your proof. You don't need their confession. You already got your confirmation. Now walk like someone who's been delivered. Speak like someone who's been shown the truth. Love yourself like someone who's been returned to their rightful identity. And if this word met you right where you are, don't keep it to yourself. Somebody out there is still stuck in the fog, still trying to make sense of the hurt. Share this with them. Because when God steps in, the narcissist can't win. And don't think it ends there. Because the moment you step out of that darkness, the enemy gets desperate. That narcissist might try to hoover their way back in. I miss you. Let's talk. Nobody understands me like you. It'll sound sweet, like they finally changed. But that ain't repentance. That's panic. Because they sense what you now carry, the freedom. And freedom doesn't need permission. God watches what we can't see, not because he wants to keep us blind, but because he's preparing the moment when we'll seize everything. And when that moment comes, oh, it's powerful. It doesn't even take anger. It doesn't take shouting or revenge. It just takes walking away with peace in your chest and truth in your steps. So if you're in that dark place right now, if you're confused, if you're questioning your own heart, just know God is watching. He sees the manipulation. He sees the lies. He sees the suffering behind your smile. And he is not silent. He is not slow. He is strategic. He will move. And when he does, it won't just be about removing you from them. It'll be about restoring everything they tried to steal. If this lit something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Send it to someone stuck in that same darkness, someone praying for clarity. Because when God steps in, the narcissist can't win. Let me speak to the ones carrying broken pieces. The ones waiting on an apology they know deep down may never come. The truth is, when you've been entangled with a narcissist, you learn real quick that accountability doesn't live there. They don't say, I'm sorry, unless they want something. And even then, it's dressed in manipulation. I'm sorry you feel that way. I never meant to hurt you, but you made me do it. Those aren't apologies. Those are power plays. They're not about healing. They're about maintaining control. But here's the truth that might hit hard and heal at the same time. God can heal what they broke without needing their apology. Yeah, you heard me. That hole in your heart, that confusion in your mind, that ache in your chest where trust used to live. God doesn't need their permission to start putting you back together. He doesn't wait for their confession to begin your restoration. Because they may never own it, but he already saw it all. See, when someone walks through your life like a storm, flipping tables and tearing through your peace, they leave damage behind. Some damage you can see. The isolation, the lies, the sudden loss of self-worth. But some damage, it's internal. It's the kind of wound that doesn't show up on your skin but bleeds in your spirit. And what makes it worse? They walk away like nothing happened, like you're just being dramatic, like the story you're carrying in your chest is fiction. That silence, that dismissal, that's another layer of pain. But this is where the enemy gets nervous, because when God begins to move in your life, he heals without needing closure. He don't need the narcissist to say, yes, I did that. Before he starts rewriting your narrative, he don't need a confession to begin your comeback. Because healing doesn't come from them. It comes from him. And when God touches something broken, it doesn't just get patched up, it gets restored. You might be sitting there thinking, but how do I move on when I never got to say my piece? Let me tell you, God already heard what you didn't get to say. He was there in the moments when they twisted your words, when they blamed you for the pain they caused, when they flipped the whole thing and made you the villain in your own story. You don't need to beg for understanding. God understood you from the start, and the beauty in his healing, it's not just emotional, it's spiritual. He doesn't just wipe away the tears. He begins to restore your identity. You start remembering who you were before the manipulation, before the gaslighting, before the quiet wars you were forced to fight alone. That's God breathing life back into dry places. That's him speaking truth where lies used to live. The narcissist made you feel like you were too much, too emotional, too needy, too intense. But God, he looks at you and says, you were always enough. Even when they couldn't see it, especially when they tried to break it. And that kind of affirmation, that changes everything. You stop waiting for them to say sorry. You stop hoping for a moment that may never come, because you realize you don't need it anymore. God will heal the conversations that were never had. He'll heal the moments you were blamed for simply asking to be loved right. He'll heal the nights you cried alone because they punished you with silence instead of honesty. And when he heals, you don't walk with bitterness. You walk with wisdom. You walk with strength. You walk with peace, not because it didn't hurt, but because you're not stuck in it anymore. You don't owe them your future just because they wrecked your past. You don't have to carry their damage in your spirit. You are allowed to be whole, even if they never once said, I'm sorry, because what they refused to fix, God is already restoring. So if you're waiting on an apology that never came, let this be your release. Let this be your peace. You can heal without it. You can rise without it. You can live without it. And if this spoke to something deep inside of you, if you've been carrying silent pain hoping for loud apologies, share this. Somebody else is waiting on something that's never coming, and they need to know when God steps in, the narcissist can't win. Let me tell you something that might not sit easy at first, but it'll set you free. The narcissist doesn't love you, they love control over you. That's a hard truth, because we think when someone gives us attention, when they chase us, when they talk sweet in the beginning, that it must mean love. But with a narcissist, it's not love, it's leverage. The moment you stop playing the role they wrote for you, the moment you stop reacting how they want, the moment you find your voice, you become the problem. They don't want your heart, they want your submission. They want your silence. They want to be able to pull your strings like a puppet. And when you cut those strings, watch how quickly admiration turns into aggression. That I love you turns into you've changed. That I need you becomes you're impossible. Why? Because the only version of you they could handle was the one they had control over. Not the one who's healing, not the one who's waking up, not the one who finally realized, this ain't love. This is bondage. And this is how you know you're dealing with a narcissist. Because love can handle freedom. Love wants you to grow. Love celebrates your voice, your mind, your boundaries. But control sees all that as a threat. The moment you stop walking on eggshells, the moment you stop explaining yourself for simply having feelings, that's when their mask starts to slip. That's when you see the shift. They'll go cold on you, cut off affection, withdraw attention. Why? Because the punishment isn't physical, it's emotional. They need you to hurt just enough to come crawling back. And when you don't, when you stay calm, when you don't chase them, when you stop trying to fix what you didn't break, they panic. Because they can't control peace. They can't manipulate someone who's done being manipulated. You ever notice how they escalate when you stay calm? You ever notice how they start saying things to provoke you just to get a reaction? That's the game. Your reaction is their fuel. That's why silence confuses them. That's why detachment shakes them. Because it's not just about attention, it's about power. And when you stop giving them access to your emotions, you take your power back. And this ain't just psychology, this is spiritual. The enemy works through control. The enemy loves confusion, loves cycles, loves abuse dressed up as passion. And God is order, God is clarity, God is freedom. So when you start stepping into your God-given identity, when you start seeing through the manipulation, when you stop trying to earn love and start accepting God's love, the narcissist loses grip. That's why they'll say, you're not the same. That's why they'll act like you're the one who's wrong. But don't let that pull you back into the lie. You are changing. You are growing. You are healing. And guess what? They don't get to follow you into the next chapter because control has no seat in the presence of freedom. And I know it hurts. I know the detachment feels cold. I know you love them. I know you wanted it to work. But you're not crazy for walking away from someone who made you feel small just to feel big themselves. That's not love. That's ego. And God didn't call you to be a slave to somebody else's ego. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your silence. If the only version of love they can give is the kind that comes with punishment, manipulation, and fear, a walk away. That's not your burden. That's not your story. That's not your destiny. Because here's the truth, love without freedom isn't love. It's a prison. And when you stop reacting, when you stop feeding their need to control, you become free. And that freedom, that's the very thing they were afraid of from the start. If you felt this deep in your spirit, if you're tired of being labeled too much, just for setting boundaries, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because when God steps in, the narcissist can't win. You ever wonder why after all the heartbreak, after all the games, after all the silent battles you fought in private, God still has you standing, still breathing, still healing, still moving forward? It's because what the narcissist tried to break in secret, the God is about to bless in public. That's how he works. He doesn't just deliver, he restores. And when he restores, he doesn't do it quietly. They thought they buried you in shame. Thought they'd drain your confidence, steal your peace, and leave you doubting your worth. But here you are. And it's not because of them. It's in spite of them. They tried to shatter your identity, confuse your mind, and paralyze your purpose. They used charm to reel you in, then control to wear you down. But even while you were shrinking, God was watching. Even in your silence, he was listening. Even when you didn't have the strength to pray, he was fighting for you anyway. And now he's bringing you out, not just out of the relationship, out of the mindset, out of the self-blame, out of the guilt, out of the fog, because God doesn't just remove you from the person. He removes the residue, the self-doubt, the fear of trusting again, the fear of being too much. Because the person who tried to convince you that your emotions were problems, that your needs were burdens, sure, they lied. And God is showing you that. But here's where it gets real. God is about to bless you loudly. And not for revenge. No, this ain't about ego. This is about justice. Divine, holy, undeniable justice. Because you suffered quietly. You endured with grace. You tried to love through pain. You gave mercy when none was returned, and God saw every moment. That's why your breakthrough is going to be public. People are going to look at you and wonder how you bounced back. Wonder how you're glowing after everything you went through. Wonder how you've got peace that doesn't match your past. That's what happens when God gets involved. He doesn't just lift you. He showcases you. He lets your healing be seen. He lets your peace speak louder than their lies. And yes, the narcissist will see it. They'll watch from the sidelines as you rebuild, as your name gets spoken in rooms they tried to keep you out of, as your light shines in places they never thought you'd reach. And you won't need to gloat. You won't need to throw it in their face, because the healing itself is the victory. Your joy, that's the answer. Your growth, that's the proof. Your peace, that's the closure. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about status. It's not about money or attention. It's about alignment. You're stepping into who you were always meant to be before the manipulation, before the shame, before you were made to believe your value came from being quiet and agreeable. And no, your value comes from being chosen, being called, being crafted in God's image. And no narcissist, no matter how calculated, can undo that. So let them talk. Let them rewrite the story for their audience. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to correct the lies. Because when God raises you up, He clears the room for truth. People will see who you are by the fruit of your life. Your peace will preach. Your joy will tell the story. Your purpose will speak louder than any smear campaign. You just keep moving. Keep healing. Keep walking in humility and truth. And let God do what He said He would do. Make beauty from the ashes. Because what was meant to destroy you, God's using that very thing to elevate you. So if this hits something deep in you, if you feel that stirring in your spirit like your season is shifting, don't keep this to yourself. Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to know their suffering is not in vain. Share this, speak it. Because when God steps in and the narcissist can't win, you want to know why the narcissist is still mad, why they still try to poke at you. Still whisper your name in rooms you've never stepped foot in. It's not because they miss you. It's not because they suddenly realized your worth. It's because they couldn't break you. And see, the narcissist's entire game is built on one thing: that control. And when you finally got wise, when you stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped chasing after the apology you were never going to get, you stripped them of their power. And that, right there, is what they can't handle. And they thought they could wear you down. They thought they could love you just enough to keep you hooked, then blame you just enough to keep you broken. They believed they could create a version of you so dependent on their approval that you'd never see your own value without them telling you who you were. But when you chose to walk away, when you chose peace over performance, when you finally realized that survival ain't the same as love, they lost. Not because you fought back harder, not because you clapped back louder, but because you healed in silence. And that kind of strength, it's terrifying to someone who only feels powerful when you're weak. You see, narcissists don't know what to do when their tactics stop working. When the guilt trips don't move you anymore. When the silent treatment just gives you space to think. When their approval doesn't dictate your joy. That's when they realize the game is over. You ain't the same. You stopped playing. And that's what it was always about. Not love, not connection, not respect. It was about winning, about staying on top. About keeping you small so they could feel big. But God had other plans. Because what they didn't see coming was your resilience, your awakening, your connection to something far bigger than them. When God steps in, everything changes. The lies get exposed. The peace gets louder. The truth starts ringing in your chest, and suddenly you're no longer asking, what's wrong with me? Instead, you're asking, why did I stay so long? That shift, that's divine. That's what scares them. Because once your eyes are open, they can't close them again. Once you've tasted peace, chaos no longer tastes like passion. Once you've experienced love without manipulation, their counterfeit version becomes obvious. And that's when you finally understand you were never the weak one. You were just the one willing to love deeply, willing to forgive. But now you're willing to protect your spirit, willing to set boundaries, willing to say no more. And don't be surprised when they try to circle back. When they come with the same charm, the same words, the same tired promises wrapped in temporary change. That's not growth, that's desperation. They don't want you back. They want the control back. They want the power. But they'll never say that. No, they'll come with softness and sadness, playing the victim, trying to rewrite history to make you doubt your healing. Don't fall for it. Not this time. Because God didn't bring you this far for you to go back to what broke you. You're not the same person anymore. You've got wisdom now. You've got discernment. You've got a new perspective. And above all else, you've got God walking beside you. So walk with your head high. Not in pride, in truth. The truth that you didn't lose them. And they lost access to someone God is raising up. Someone who's learning how to love themselves again. Someone who's stepping into their purpose. Someone who's no longer available for manipulation, lies, and spiritual confusion. That's the real reason they're mad. That's why they can't stop watching, talking, whispering, because they see what you're becoming. And it's everything they tried to convince you could never be without them. So don't waste another second in regret. Don't look back. You didn't fail. You won. Because when God steps in, the story changes. And when he writes your next chapter, no narcissist, no lie, no manipulation can erase what he's already declared over your life. If that landed deep in your soul, if you've been questioning your strength, let this be your confirmation. And share this with somebody still trapped in that emotional warfare. Let them know what you now know. When God steps in, the narcissist can't win. So now you understand, it was never just about the pain or the heartbreak or even the person who tried to break you. It was about what God was doing through it. He was shaping you, refining you, lifting the veil so you could see clearly. And once you saw it for what it was, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the constant shifting of blame, you didn't just survive it. You outgrew it, retreat. God stepped in not just to pull you out, but to set you apart, to elevate you beyond the cycles, beyond the trauma, beyond the false narrative they tried to write about you. And now you walk different, you speak different, you love different, because it's coming from a place that isn't empty anymore. Let them say what they want. Let them spin the story however they need to. Your life is the evidence. Your peace is the proof. And your healing. That's the part they can't touch. So hold your head high, not because of who walked away, but because of who stood with you when everyone else did. That's the power. That's the grace. That's when heaven stepped in and hell had to back off. And if you're feeling this, if something in your spirit is saying, this was for me, then don't just keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone else is fighting that silent battle, and they need to know, when God steps in, the narcissist can't win.